Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully, you're all doing well. Great to see so many people. Great to see some friendly names, some people I've met before, some people are customers. So great to see everybody today. We're going to get kicked off here in just a minute or two. While we're waiting, everybody in the chat, just throw your location. Where are you dialing in from today? Let's see where some different people's. I'm in San Francisco, California. So myself, I'm there. Kind of curious where everybody else is. Got Houston, Texas. Awesome. Got a friend late. One of our friends is right here on Houston, Texas, one of our presenters today. Bedford, Chicago, Salt Lake City, England. All right. Wisconsin. Hey, go Wisconsin. You got some baseball games coming up there soon. Lots of Texas, lots of Phoenix. Awesome. Great to see everybody. Great to see everybody. Fantastic. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, we've got a goodly number of people here today. Let's go ahead and keep on going with the slides there. So I wanted to welcome everybody. This is Compliance Meets AI. So the focus of this particular webinar series is we're really going to go soup to nuts on the compliance side of generative AI, Copilot in particular, but we'll touch on some of the other Gen AI products out there and how with Microsoft Purview, we can really have a lot of visibility, control, mitigation measures that we can do with Purview when it comes to not only Copilot, Copilot agents, Copilot Studio agents, Copilot Chat, and then, of course, some of our other products that are out there as well when it comes to generative AI in the organization. So great to see everybody. Great to see, oh, lots of people. We got Belgium, North Carolina, Reading, England. Nice, Reading. Awesome. Cool. So we're going to spend just a few minutes today going on what we're going to cover in this webinar series. We're going to talk a little bit about Purview, the topics we're going to cover. We're going to give you all a chance to make sure you're registered for all the different sessions. So we do have 6 sessions, 5 after today. I'm going to throw that link in there in just 1 second so you have all of them for you so you can continue to register. Um, and then we're going to get into SharePoint Advanced Management. So SharePoint Advanced Management really kind of runs, we think about how Copilot works. Copilot works from a user context. So what that really means at the end of the day is that your Copilot, your instance of Copilot, if you have the paid version, has access to the Microsoft Graph. And that basically means that whatever you have permissions to, whether that's SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint backend of Teams, Copilot also has access to. And that's really where a lot of concern falls with our organizations. They want to make sure that things aren't overshared, that people with Copilot just don't have access to things we don't. And that's where my good friend Liz Sundin on the call today is going to really walk us through how we can do that. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. Next slide, please. Just a couple of rules of the road as we talk about this. So your microphones are disabled currently. As we go through to the Q&A section, just raise your hand if you have a question. You can type questions in the chat window all the time. There's myself and Ben. We're going to be here to help answer those questions as we go through. But we'll have some time at the end for live question and answer too. So I'll basically ask you, if you have a question, put your hand in the air. I'll enable your mic and then just come off of mute. And then you can go ahead and ask your questions and we'll go through there. Also, last thing to really mention, all these sessions are recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, drop off the phone call. And you will receive a link to these recordings about 2 to 3 days after each session. So just keep that in mind. You will have a link for that download. I'm also going to be cross-posting on YouTube and a couple of other things so we can have accessibility to all of these that are out there. Just dropped a link in the chat. So that's the link to this actual series for registration. So please, if you haven't registered for all the different sessions, please do. Let's go ahead and look at that next slide so we can talk through those. So first off, let's meet the team. So you got myself there, Jay Cotton. I don't quite look like that anymore, but not bad. We've got Liz Sundin. She's our guest speaker today, so it's so great to have Liz here. We got Mr. Ben Perkins. Ben Perkins is one of our security SMEs in what we call HLS, or Health and Life Sciences. And we also have Kevin Wee. Kevin will be joining us shortly. He's also a subject matter expert when it comes to Purview, working in the health and life sciences as well. I know there's a lot of people here that aren't in necessarily health and life sciences. That's great. We wanted to open this up for everybody because working with Purview and working with these compliance pieces for generative AI really kind of span industries. The protections we have, it may be different types of data you want to protect depending on what industry you are, but the concepts are all kind of the same. So that's going to be your team. You're going to be seeing quite a bit of us over the next 6 weeks. So fantastic. And thank you all on the team for joining me and helping out with the sessions as well. Next slide, Liz. Just to kind of cover what we're going to be talking about throughout these series. So today is going to be really focused on SharePoint Advanced Management. I'll talk just a few minutes here about Purview as we go through. So, really when it comes to Purview, what I call Copilot aware applications. So these are the applications that are out there for us to have Copilot visibility. So we're going to talk about DSPM for AI next week. Great session, great topic. Really gives us that great visibility into Copilot and quite a few policies to actually control it as well. Then we're going to get into data loss prevention. And that's really going to be data loss prevention for Copilot. Copilot agents, Copilot Studio agents, Copilot Chat. All of these can be basically aware of via DLP within Purview. We're going to focus on sensitivity labels. We're also going to talk about some upcoming changes that we're going to see within data loss prevention when it comes to Copilot in particular, about some of the other things that are coming down us at the pipe. Week after that, we're going to do a deep dive into e-discovery, auditing, and retention. Some things that people kind of miss a lot when they're talking about their Copilot journey. They just don't really think about e-discovery. What can e-discovery do for us when it comes to Copilot and the rest? And again, these can cover not just Copilot, but also other generative AI activities as well. And then next session is going to be communication compliance. So a great way to be able to monitor Copilot activity, and even non-Microsoft generative AI in there as well. And again, all these cover not just Copilot, but Copilot Chat, Copilot the paid version, Copilot Studio, and all the different agents we're going to be talking about as well. So the agents that are built in, like researcher analysts, also any agents that are created by the users. We call that the Agent Builder Experience, or Copilot Lite now. And then the last session for this one is going to be insider risk. So we're really going to talk about insider risk, how we can use insider risk to monitor for all types of generative AI activity, whether that is possibly malicious, maybe we're just looking for certain information types, and then what kind of actions can we take on top of that with insider risk as well. So really jam-packed for the next 5 weeks after this session. And again, please register. You can see the aka.ms on the bottom there, and register for all the sessions, each session, the ones you think are pertinent. It's great if you actually come to all of the sessions, actually, because we will cover a lot of content, and some of them will build on each other as well. So that's going to be the sessions for this round of Compliance Meets AI. We are planning a second round of this after the holiday season to go into more even in-depth topics. And then maybe we can start, look at some different times as well. So just a quick plug for my healthcare customers out there. Now, it's not just healthcare customers. Anybody can join this, but this is really kind of focused for healthcare customers. But this is called Coffee and Copilot. It's hosted by some great friends of mine. I just threw the link in the chat window as well to register for those sessions. They do 3 sessions a week, and it's focused on Copilot Chat. So this is the Copilot that comes with your entitlements. So you don't have to pay for this one. All you have to do is you have your Microsoft Office 365 license. Doesn't matter which license you have. But please join those sessions. They do a great job. So please join in when you can for those as well. Last one. And here we have just one other piece. So for all of us out there that have Microsoft. So if you're a Microsoft customer, you more likely have a Microsoft customer representation or an account manager at that point. We have a lot of offerings we have that kind of build on top of this, and these can be done just for your customer, your organization. So we have what we call onboarding accelerators. These really get you up and running, and they're intended to actually get you working in these DLP or these Purview solutions as quickly as possible. So please reach out to your account manager. If you don't know who that is, you can always drop me a line. You see my email in there, j.cotton@microsoft.com. I'm more than happy to assist you if I can, getting these connected to the right people for your organization. But if you do know who your Microsoft account managers are, then just talk to them or ask your manager. They'll be able to know as well. So just want to know that there's more than just this, and these can be done just for your organizations. Most of them are a day long, some are maybe 2 days long, but they do great deep dives and actually help you get these set up. So just make sure you're aware of that. And like I said, if you don't know who your account manager is, just drop me an email and we can help you out. Okay. That all being said, gonna turn this over to Liz Sundett now to do some deep dives on basically SharePoint data governance and why it matters. So Liz, all you, my friend.
Thank you very much, Jay. Welcome, everyone. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Liz Sundett. I happen to be a Copilot CSA, or Cloud Solution Architect, very much like Jay is. And I've been working on SharePoint and working on governance for many, many years. And so it really lends itself very nicely to me talking about SharePoint Advanced Management and some of the oversharing that we get in terms of using Copilot every single day. I've run through this with quite a few customers at this point, and it always surprises me how many surprises there are in the organization. So this is just a little bit of a purview, and hopefully we can help you out with some of the questions that we have throughout the day as well. So let's get started. Why does it even matter what we're talking about? I mean, it's Copilot, but why are we talking about SharePoint? Like, we can just, not do anything there. Well, guess what? A lot of the information that Copilot is pulling is going to be housed in SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, Exchange, all of those different areas. And so when we are looking at SharePoint data governance, and why it really matters is because the amount of documents that we create as organizations, 3.2 billion documents a day are added to Microsoft 365. Now, that might not be your organization, that's everybody, but 3.2 billion, you are adding to that number every single day. And that number is not getting smaller, it's getting larger. By the end of 2025, we're looking at the unstructured data that we have in our organizations to be about 80 to 90%, and that is growing as well. And so we spend a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of money trying to get our hands around this and addressing those concerns, such as oversharing, such as old sites. Why is Copilot pulling these pieces of information? Well, it's probably because you have access to that information, or it's older information. So employees make mistakes. So this is really, how do we try and govern all of these types of things that we have in our organization? And we have specific challenges around Copilot in terms of the sprawl of content. Many customers have storage issues where they're hitting that upper limit of storage and they're having to buy more storage, or they're having to archive some things, but they don't know where to start in terms of archiving. For those of you that haven't put in retention or deletion policies, Sam has some types of capabilities in terms of identifying what should you put in retention or deletion. We have ownership issues where people have created a site or created a Teams instance and forgotten about it and abandoned it and started something new. And so then we're left with, sites that aren't being used, or people have left the organization and we no longer have an owner for that particular site anymore. All of these types of things leads to even more and more sprawl. And then governance, I've been talking years and years and years about governance, and many customers have just kind of, okay, yeah, we'll do a little bit of governance right now, but we're kind of kicking the can down the road, so to speak. And now is a great opportunity, as we are using Copilot in our organizations. We got to address the governance side of things. Like, what are we doing on, these pieces of content that aren't being controlled, aren't being looked at? We don't have policies in place for it. And so in some ways, many customers are like, well, we've got kind of the wild, wild west. I'm going to show you how to tame that wild, wild west, and hopefully, take advantage of not only some of the pieces of capabilities that we have in place, but just breaking it down into chunks so that you can take and look at what is most important and being able to go forward with that. And then we've got adoption, and people are probably our biggest challenge in the organization. We don't have processes. People make mistakes. We don't know what we are doing many times. We don't have a good ability to teach our owners and our members what they are responsible for in the organizations. If you do, that's awesome. Keep doing it and get better at it and share that. But let's just talk about, kind of life cycle of content management and all those types of things as well. And that's all part of those governance pieces and those challenges that we have in our organization. Above all else, we have an oversharing problem. And I cannot emphasize enough how many customers I have talked to about their oversharing. And they're like, yeah, we think we got a problem, but we're not really sure. And boy, oh boy, once I start running some of these reports that I'm going to show you in a few minutes, it becomes an even bigger apparent problem. And they are very, very surprised how much oversharing there is in the organization. So what happens is that users, when they go to use Copilot for the first time, they're getting all of this information pulled back, and we're like, whoa. You've got access to information that you probably shouldn't have because of the oversharing. Or we've got inappropriate content, stuff that's old, stuff that should not be applicable at all. And Copilot's pulling that back as, hey, this is the best resource for you, because it's old and it's not good information. And so we've got that out of date or irrelevancy that is apparent with Copilot as well, and getting those responses. And it makes you not necessarily trust Copilot when Copilot's just pulling back the information that that person has access to. So we've got to control the content and really understand what the life cycle of that content is going forward. So some of the biggest concerns that I get from customers, probably the number one is we've set this site that people are creating, we've set it to public. And what happens is when we set a site to public, that we have everyone except external users. So we've got all of the users in our organization when a site is set to public, and that might be a team site. It could be a SharePoint site. It could be, hey, we've set something up when it should actually be private, but our owners don't necessarily understand, oh, this should be private instead of being public. And so just making those small little adjustments or those little changes along the way that we can do with good governance and with good education and good training for those site owners to be able to make those little changes as we move forward. I wish we didn't have a problem with inheritance and those broken permissions that are apparent still today in SharePoint. I thought groups might solve some of that, but guess what? It really didn't, because we still have classic sites. We still have broken inheritance. We still have permission issues across the board. And then sharing is hard. And I have worked with many, many customers on trying to understand sharing. Many times we just send out, everyone in the organization. Why? Because it's easier, right? We don't want to have to think about who I specify for sharing a file. We just say, oh, it's okay, I'll just share it with everyone. There's no sensitive information in there, but that information changes over time, and I might end up with sensitive information. And I haven't done anything with putting a sensitivity label on that content. So while some of the SAM features work great with the Purview features in terms of sensitivity and compliance labeling, you can do many of these steps that we're going to talk about today alone with just a SAM type of capabilities. And you only need one Copilot license in order to get some of the capabilities that we're going to talk about in terms of SAM today. Okay. So what we are looking at in terms of what we're going to cover is really that green bar at the top. What do we have for content? What is in there, and how can we control it? Jay and the rest of the team are going to be talking for the next several weeks about some more of the data and security and compliance path. But for today, we're thinking about and talking about content management and governance, and really looking at what we have in place, being able to archive or delete some of those sites that has irrelevant information that Copilot's pulling back. get rid of those, pull them out, put them into archive. Guess what? It doesn't cost you anything anymore because we made those changes back in March, that you can rehydrate a site or you can bring back that site. It just costs you a little bit of time. So we don't have any kind of charges for being able to bring back that information. And so those content can like kind of be pushed off to the side and not have some of that indexing going on those pieces. And then I'm going to show you how to run some of these reports. The life cycle management report, the large oversharing report, or the data access governance, or the DAG report that we call it, to be able to understand and then chunk that down into what we really need to be able to go forward and review some of that content within a process that you would define. And then we want to think about, like, how do we restrict access or limit some of those sites, either by different policies in the organization or just, you know, putting containers around oversharing some of that content until we can put some of the sensitivity labels around that if we haven't done that already. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be showing you today. And in terms of like really analyzing and understanding the reports, let's take a look at a quick little demo and understanding the reports first and foremost. Okay, so what I look at here, I am in a SharePoint admin center in my tenant. This happens to be a demo tenant, so I'm not going to have great information here, but I'm going to show you a sample report of some sample data that I have to be able to run some of these types of things. The first report that I would be looking at is this site lifecycle management report. Now, this is in that advanced management area. Again, you can turn this on with one Copilot license. So if you have Copilot licenses, make sure that you're looking at the advanced management area in your SharePoint admin center, and then look at the site lifecycle management. The first report that I like to look at is this inactive sites policies. And you can see I've got a policy that's running. I can do a number of different policies. I just want to see, hey, which sites do I have inactive? This one happened to be for 3 months. I found no sites in my demo tenant. Again, there's just a handful of sites here. So I'm not really looking at the full scope or the full breadth of that, but I can go ahead and I can create policies to be able to look at what content that I have that might be a little bit old. Okay, and this is one of the first things that I usually tell customers in terms of those policies in the organization, to really like create a policy around how fast you're going to inactivate or move those into an archive state. All right. For Microsoft, we actually started out at about a year, and then we moved to 6 months, and now we've got 3 months. That might work for your organization. It might not. You know your organizations better than, of course, we do, so we can make those recommendations, but it should be something, you know, kind of that line in the sand that once it reaches this point, we should be looking at archiving and should be understanding that data a little bit more. So what I can do is I can set that policy. Usually what I do is I just run this wide open. I set all of the types of templates. So I get my classic sites, my communication sites, my group connected sites, my non-group connected sites, all of those types of sites that I have in my organization. And I don't need to filter this by sensitivity label or site creation or anything like that. I'm just going to include everything in this policy. And then I'm going to configure this. I can say, hey, I want it for a different set of months. We know that the 3 months policy, I didn't find anything that was inactive. I don't expect to find anything for 6 months either, but this report, just running that kind of open, whatever that is, to be able to look at and get that report back. I'm also going to select this for not the site owners, but I actually want the site admins to be notified. And I'm going to like just run this in simulation. I just want to see the report for right now. So I'm not going to do anything in terms of reinforcement. I'm just going to do the do nothing radio button. I'm going to name my sites or name my policy. So 6 months inactivity. And then I can do a description as well. And I'm, again, just going to run this in simulation. Once I click finish on that, I'll be able to generate that report and be able to look in and see if I've got any kind of report. It'll show me when the report is done and I'm able to download that. Okay. So that's the inactive sites policy one. The next one that I want to show you is the data access governance reports. Now, the data access governance reports, this UI is relatively new. This just came out in about the last month. You can also run many of these reports using PowerShell. I highly recommend, or actually it's only available in the SharePoint Online Management shell, and you should have a recent version of that, like a version that's been updated in the last 6 months or so. Connect to your tenant and then run the get-SPO data access governance insight. You have a report for both SharePoint as well as OneDrive. It's going to give you the report ID and a bunch of information after that. This one happens to say in queue. It will say completed if it is completed. Highly recommend that you take a copy of this GUID, that report ID. There's another piece of PowerShell that you can run, and it's going to demand that you put that report ID in. That is specific to your tenant to be able to extract those reports. Okay, and so then all of that can be done within PowerShell, but you can do it right here in the UI as well. Okay, so the shared with everyone except external users. I ran this. Again, it's a demo tenant. I'm not seeing much here. It's okay because I'm going to show you some sample data in just a second. But all of these, reports in terms of site permissions, activity reports, what I have for sharing links. I've got my SharePoint report generating. I've got my OneDrive report generating. Okay. Once you get all of those generated and ready to go, now it's time to do an analysis on those pieces of inventory. So I've got my spreadsheet, and this is just a sample piece of data that I'm using, but I'm going back and forth between my sample data as well as my inventory. And this is just a snapshot of the inventory. The full inventory analysis that I usually do is about 6 pages that I just, take a look at, hey, how many inactive sites do I have? That comes from that inactive sites report. How many group connected sites do I have? Well, I'm going to look at my group connected SharePoint sites, right? And so I know that based on the type of template that I'm using. It's not going to be a classic site. It's not going to be a communication site. It's going to be that team site that I'm going to look at here. So I can see I've got, in this example, I've got 35,000 group connected sites out of 46,000. That's awesome. We actually look for something that's in that higher range in terms of that group connected. Group connected's a little bit easier to control in that type of way. Okay, and then I might look at private sites that are group connected. So my site privacy, setting my public versus private. How many sites do I have that are those types of sites? And then I might look at, my public sites as well. Okay, and then I can dig in a little bit deeper. I might look at, I've got, my site privacy. I'm going to change that back to private. And then, gosh, I want to look at, how many EEU permissions we have on this, or everyone except external users. I've got 95 sites that are private sites, but have everyone that we're sharing that. Maybe a little bit of a red flag for some of those people, but they are always very, very interested in some of these little types of things to be able to figure out, what do I do next? So giving this full inventory, how many OneDrive sites, how many community sites, do I need to do anything with those classic SharePoint sites that might have some of those broken inheritance permissions against? All of those types of things helps me organize and helps me figure out, what do I need to do next? Your Microsoft people can absolutely help you do this analysis. We can teach you how to fish and be able to do these types of things for yourself, but also give you this full inventory of all of those different sites. and then be able to make some recommendations moving forward. So let's just take a look at a few of those recommendations and what we need to do. And so what I like to do is just put this full plan together. This helps you chunk it out into those smaller pieces and gives you actionable steps. So the first thing, absolutely the first thing that I would recommend, take a look at your inactive sites. Archive those. Get them out of being able to look at those from a Copilot standpoint. It's old information. It's low risk. I've had customers that have had sites for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years that haven't been touched. There's a lot of that old information that's out there, old content. Archive that off. Work with your end users, work with your site owners. Can we archive this? Do you still need it? All of that. And then be able to set that up in a read-only state that we don't have Copilot processing against and giving you like information that really shouldn't be there in the first place. So this is a site owner plus a site admin kind of, conversation. If you can't find site owners, then I put it back on those site admins to be able to say, hey, there's a line in the sand. It's our policy. Create those policies in your organization so that we understand after a certain period of inactivity, no use, we're going to, go ahead and inactivate those sites. That might be, doing a group inactivity, something of that sort. Okay. Jay, you have a question?
It's actually a really good question in the chat, Liz. If you want to take a shot at that one.
Yeah.
I'll read. Does archiving of sites work only for the site collection, or is it also at the sub-site level as well?
So it will work on any site. So it will work on like the sub-site as well. So we have not gotten to the point where we're doing like individual pieces of content, but any site or site collection you can do it on. So
awesome. Another question, does this process for inactive sites, we're assuming no retention labels in place, right?
Correct.
And then
no retention labels in place. If you have a retention label, then it will follow the retention kinds of rules that we'll be talking about in a few weeks. So
and one other question, can you only archive sites or can you archive individual files as well?
Yeah, can't archive the individual files yet. So just the sites at this point. Yep.
Thanks, Liz.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So the next thing that I do recommend is that we have some type of a site access review. I know when this first started at Microsoft, it was a little bit like, what are we doing? But it has really helped not only that stale content, but understanding who I'm sharing with. And the site owners know this better than anyone. Okay. That's one of the reports that I would run as well is, who are my site owners? Find those site owners. Maybe those site owners need to be updated. This will give you some really great information on finding those site owners and be able to initiate that review of the site. Okay. And this helps just to make sure that I've got the right permissions, I've got the right people that are aligned to that. And I can see, oh gosh, I have some oversharing. I have maybe some different permissions on these specific files that are not necessarily permissioned on the overall site. So being able to really review this information, put some guardrails around it that the site owner is involved in, and understanding where that responsibility lies might take a little bit of training, might take some policies, might take some governance otherwise, but your site owners should be completing this kind of review of what is in this. Okay, so being able to do these on those different pieces of information. Ben, is there another question?
Hey, Liz. Yeah, got a question about restoring for archiving. Does it still have an extra cost for storing and restoring?
No, we changed that in March. So you can, once you archive a site, there's a reduction in the cost, especially if you're hitting that upper threshold. There's actually a reduced cost to being able to archive that information and then to rehydrate it. Say if I need it back, because there's, somebody's like, I can't find my site, or, the site was archived, that type of thing. You can get that back. It just takes a little bit of time to get that back, about 24 hours to be able to get that back, but there's no additional costs to rehydrate that information. So great questions. All right. So once we've done kind of the analysis on who should be in our sites, the next thing that we would look at is another SAM feature that you can enact, and this is restricting access of the sites. There's also restrict content discovery of the sites, or what we call RCD. So we've got RAC or we've got RCD. And the two are used somewhat simultaneously, but they're very, very different. Microsoft resources can, of course, help you with what scenarios that you're facing and what's the most appropriate. Just to give you kind of an idea of the difference between the two of them, a RAC policy puts kind of a container around that particular site. It says, if you're not in the site owners or if you're not in the site members, you don't get to have access to any content on this site any longer. The site owners and the site members, they can go along all nice and dandy. Nothing's changed for them. They can run Copilot, they can run agents against it, but they're already a site owner or site member. If that site owner or site member has shared some content with somebody else, putting a RAC policy around that site means that there's no more sharing. Okay, so even if it was shared with you the day before that RAC policy went into place, guess what? You don't have access any longer. You have to be added as a site owner or a site member to be able to get content from that particular site. And you can audit this. You got a nice way to be able to look at, hey, guess what? These people are kind of knocking on the door asking for the content because they have a link, something of that sort. So SharePoint makes it really easy to be able to audit that information as well. Restrict content discovery is very different in that while we're not kind of limiting that oversharing, this is very much the opposite of restricted SharePoint search, which is another tool, but that tool is put at the tenant level, whereas this, we're actually restricting the content of the sites. And so we're locking that down from being able to be seen by Copilot. It's turning off all of those agents from running against that content. It doesn't matter if you've overshared, that oversharing is now restricted in terms of SharePoint. And so you can put this on any site throughout your organization. And this is really kind of that next step to get off, if you've already turned on restricted SharePoint search, to be able to change that just a little bit and be able to put in restricted content discovery on that. So you can no longer discover some of the content that's on that. All right. I saw a hand, but I'm just, okay, I'll pause.
Yeah.
There's a hand
We'll
up.
take
Yeah.
some live questions from hand raising when we get to the Q&A. So Joel, just hang on and we'll get you at the end here.
Awesome.
Okay, or you can always put it in chat too.
Yeah. The next milestone is to look at OneDrive. I have seen OneDrives that have been shared with everyone across the organization. So while we looked at some of the SharePoint reports, remember there's that data access governance for OneDrive specifically. Sharing is hard. I know it is. The easy button is that we're just going to share my OneDrive with everybody, right? Or we're going to share a file with everybody. And people don't realize when they get years down the road that they actually have a lot of OneDrive content that is still being shared with everyone across the organization. So having your site owners, your OneDrive people really understanding this and being able to kind of like work with, hey, you don't need to share it with everyone. Let's look at those OneDrive pieces and being able to work with those users that maybe have shared with everyone across the organization, or shared with everyone even outside the organization. If you've got those anonymous links, that type of thing, and then reducing that, ability to be able to share those types of files in the future is those next steps that we talk about in this particular milestone. Provisioning. We are still talking about provisioning. If you do not have things like group expiration policy, especially if it's like, hey, I haven't been using this group, you can actually have a group expiration automatically if you've got E5 licenses and some Entra licenses on that, so that you don't have to, go and look at those sites over and over and over again. It just automatically just goes away if you haven't been using it, right? So access to those groups, access to those applications for those different team members over time, that all changes. So you want to do some of those access reviews like we talked about earlier, and talk about in the way that those site owners would be able to take advantage of being able to do that. And then we are working on policies in terms of that site attestation. You can create policies and then hopefully by the end of the year, being able to execute some of those emails for site attestations to be able to be done by those site owners. Again, finding those site owners, Sam can help you with some of those reports and finding those site owners. Who's the right people to go after for those particular sites so that they can attest to the information, that the information is still relevant, that we have the right people on those groups to be able to go forward, that we aren't oversharing, those types of things. So all of those in terms of the milestones for the life cycle management and putting those policies in place is kind of the next recommendation. And then finally, all of this would not be possible if we did not have communication and we did not have training throughout our organizations. So understanding those policies, being able to put those policies in place. Guess what? I'm a lover of SharePoint. It's a great place to put things that we have for both training, both policies, and then any communication that you want to have. Put those out on, some team sites or SharePoint online sites, and put those best practices in place. Making people aware, doing regular updates and regular training sessions, being able to work with those site owners on exactly what they are responsible for to be able to go forward. There's a great kit that you can use called Copilot Success Kit that's out on adoption.microsoft.com to be able to take advantage of just understanding all of these types of things, to be able to set up a really good center of excellence, as well as a really good community of practice to be able to move forward and communicate with your end users on all of this type of stuff. So I'm a trainer at heart, so I know that is, very, very difficult types of things to be able to do. But again, that's what your Microsoft resources are here for, to be able to do with you as well, is to make all of these recommendations, teach you how to run these reports, and then set up some of those long-term things going forward. Okay, with that, I am at the end of some of my presentation, but let's make this a little bit more of a conversation. Jay, I'm going to turn it back over to you and find out what we have for Q&A.
Couple of questions. I got one question in the chat. Can we access reviews if we need to change the owner?
Can you access reviews if you need to change the owner? I'm not sure I understand that one.
Daniel, if you'd like to come off of mute, raise your hand and I'll unmute you if you want to give some clarification. And that goes for everybody else. If you want to ask a question live, just put your hand up in the air and I'll enable your mic and then you can come off of mute.
Yeah, I think I'm off of mute. Can you hear me?
I sure can, Dan.
Great. Sorry, I mistyped in the chat. If we need to cancel an access review, can we cancel access reviews? Can we make modifications to access reviews? As well, I had a second question in there that probably plays into the same thing. Can we remind owners of access reviews? Are there more controls that we can put in place?
Oh yeah, great questions. So once the access review emails go out, it's kind of like it's gone out type of thing. So I'm not sure about like being able to like cancel, or if you would more just work with the site owner on that particular review, and then understanding, oh, is there a site owner? Does it need to go to a different owner? All of those kinds of things on that. And then the next question was around, remind me again, I'm sorry.
I think the most important question for us is, can we set a reminder or send a reminder to the owner for access reviews?
Yeah, absolutely. So that once the email kind of goes out, that is something that, you would have in a admin portal area to be able to kind of like go and be able to look at, be able to reinitiate all of those kinds of things as well. So yeah.
Okay, maybe we can find some time to walk through those steps, because we haven't been able to find that.
Haven't been able to do some of those access review kind of things. Okay.
Yeah.
Some other questions out there from anybody who wants to come off of mute and speak? Put your hand up in the air. Yeah, Jose.
Hey, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. The question has to do with these site reviews that when you trigger the policy and it determines that a site has assets that are overshared, and it creates this dashboard for each site owner. What is the criteria that it follows for saying that an asset is overshared or not? Because it's not showing you all the assets on the site. It shows you only those that are overshared. We want to know what's the criteria and if it can be changed at some time.
So you have maybe files that you have overshared, but it could be like a full oversharing on the permissions of the site as well, right? So it depends on what you're looking at in terms of creating, some of those access reviews. I'm looking at the SAM reports, like these reports, from an overall site perspective. Okay, so I'm not looking at it from the individual pieces of content. There might be some pieces of content or one file within that, but that's really for the site owners to be able to initiate some of those reviews on what their content is, because they know their content the best in that regard.
Yeah, and Jose, one of the things that I run into a lot, Jose, is the criteria I look for when I'm working with customers is mainly when it's shared with the entire organization. Because there are sites out there that should be, right? So you have your intranet site, you have your HR sites, all the rest. But when we're really thinking about some of those shared with everybody's, that's what I really take a double look at when I'm looking at that one.
Yeah, and I would look at like the site name. I look at the site naming convention on a lot of those, just to be able to understand, hey, do I have HR? Do I have legal? Do I have, contracts? Do I have, policies? Just different keywords that when I look at that site, I can understand in the naming of that site, if it should have maybe a purview label on that. If it doesn't, gosh, if it's shared publicly, or if it is public, maybe I want to make that into a private site instead. So I'm looking at it from holistically the sites. Again, it would be up to those users to be able to look at those individual pieces of content otherwise.
Awesome.
And thank you, Jay.
Great. Yeah. Other questions out there? Go ahead and raise your hand. Jenna.
Yes. Hi, thank you so much for the great session. Thanks, team, for that. Thanks, Liz. So I have a very basic question, though. I wanted to know that the Copilot access where users go ahead and put on queries and get a response from the AI. So to restrict someone at that level, I believe we can restrict at the license level. But besides that, from Purview, can we create some policies to find when the data is getting exfiltrated? Is there a possibility with that?
Not in SAM. There might be some other types of information that you would be able to understand, like what those users are up against. I think, Jay, there's a session on the data security posturing, correct?
Yeah, we've got quite a few
Yeah.
sessions coming up to cover this
Yeah.
piece for us.
Yeah.
Jenna, great question. Lots of things within data loss prevention we can look at from that perspective. And even some additional reporting, we can actually see how things are being shared and all the rest. So more to come on that one. Just make sure you register for our upcoming sessions, and we'll go a lot deeper into that as well.
Sure,
I got a question.
Thanks.
You bet, my friend. Thank you. Jeff, question. How you doing, my friend?
Good. So if a user has recently interacted with a file, will restricted content discoverability still prevent that file from showing up in searches and Copilot from raising that rate?
Yes and no, depending on how you manage that. So if you put a rack policy in, and they've recently shared that, and now you've got a rack policy, it means all of those links are now gone, right? They're no longer able to access that information. Okay. That works differently than like restricted SharePoint search. When you're putting it at the tenant level, if you've recently accessed that information, gosh, you've recently accessed that. It's still going to show up because it's still part of the graph interface that you have access to that says, oh, well, you've recently interacted with this content. So yeah, it's still going to show in Copilot some of those pieces of information. So rack policy is going to be different than restricted SharePoint search or the restricted content discovery kind of abilities there. So you want to really kind of hone in on some of those examples and then ask your Microsoft resources for which one do I put in based on these kinds of scenarios. Okay.
Got it. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Great question.
Kumar. I thought Kumar had a question. He put his hand down.
High five.
Whoever, Mom, you go first. Or Kumar, either one. You guys just come off of mute if you want to talk. Your mic has been enabled, so you should be able to speak. If you're trying to speak, you're on mute. Just FYI. Okay, if you're not able to come off of mute, you can just type your questions in chat as well. But both of you, Kumar and Mohammed, you guys are both muted right now, but your mic is enabled, so feel free to come off if you can unmute yourself. Maybe you're double muted, possibly triple muted.
Oh.
Happens to me all the time.
Yeah, me too. I've got a little separate.
Mohammed, to answer that question, a file generated by Copilot actually does inherit the sensitivity label. So let's say I have this label, let's call it highly confidential, on a file, and then I use Copilot to create, let's say it's a Word doc, and then I use Copilot to make a PowerPoint out of that Word doc, and the Word doc has a sensitivity label on it. The PowerPoint presentation that I've created using that Copilot on that Word doc will inherit that particular sensitivity label. So great question, my friend. That always comes up as well. Yes, and the question about, is this recorded? Yes, this is recorded, and everybody should receive a link to the recording for registered attendees about 2 or 3 days from now. Other questions from the group out there, whether in chat or in Q&A. I'm not seeing anything in Q&A. Anybody else have anything to come off of mute with? Okay. All right. Oh, we got one. William, please. Feel free to come off of mute, my friend. I sure can.
Awesome. So the reports you showed in those SAM reports look super helpful, but it's sort of like looking at the site level and looking down. Is there a way to sort of do it the opposite? Say, given William, what can he see? Sort of like a user looking at the universe.
Not that I know of in the SAM reports. Jay, do you know if there's any like user-based reports from a purview standpoint?
There
There
isn't.
was.
No,
There isn't.
yeah,
Okay,
there
yeah.
isn't, not really. There are, it's something you can do, but you can't really do it at scale, my friend. You can run basically, there's a couple scripts out there that you can run written by a friend of mine that runs in the context of a user, but it's not something like I can run against a whole org and see what they have access to. I can run it with one user, logged in user, and it would say what they have access to. I'll post that script in here just so you can see it. It's another way that we can kind of come at this oversharing piece. It's written by my friend Joe Rogers, but it's not really intended for an individual
organization.
basis. It's a great
Yeah.
question, though.
Yeah.
Isn't that something that was included for DSPM for AI? You can generate a report based on one user or multiple users, and what
We can do the data, the data access governance piece of it. So that's one of the reports we can run on oversharing. What it really does, though, is it looks at the top 100 sites access in the organization, and it runs on a continuous basis. And we'll talk about that next week quite a bit. But it's not necessarily then again at the user level. It's really taking it. So these are the ones that are most accessed across the org, and then pull up types of information like what type of sharing do we have on there? What type of data is on there? What kind of labels have been applied to it? And all the rest. So it doesn't really run in a user context that way. So it's a definite challenge to do it at a user level. But we'll talk more about it more as we get into this. Great question, my friend. Question from, okay. Can we pre-label a Copilot prompt prior to generating a response? So great question. So there is something coming. It's in private preview right now, which it's not going to pre-label it for you, but it will look at sensitive information types in your org. And then we will block it at the actual UI level. So instead of it going and looking for a label, we're going to say, okay, I put in a prompt, and it's going to say, okay, I see in that prompt that you have type in something like a social security number, or maybe a MRN number, or whatever it may be. So it's not necessarily looking to label, but it's going to look at the actual content of your prompt itself and block it at that level. Now that's not out yet. It hasn't been released, but it is coming relatively soon. Great question, my friend. I have posted the link into the chat for the follow-up sessions for registration. Please, everybody, when you get some time, register for the following sessions. We got a lot in there. And then I have one other link I'm going to throw in here. And this is to a form. This is just a feedback survey. If you have time, fill this out. It'll take 2 minutes. I'm going to send it out via email too. But we do want to hear your thoughts on this session. And I'm going to do this with every session. That way we can just make it more engaging and more useful to you as we go forwards. And also there's questions in there about what you want to see next. What other topics would you like covered? So that's going to help us guide not only this series, but in the following series we're going to do on these topics as well. Another question. We have an M365 E5 license for users and some Copilot licenses for VIP users. We want to implement Copilot in our environment. What should be our first step, and where should we need to start? Honestly, Kumar, great question. We get that all the time. This session, what we just talked about, is one of the first things we always need to do. And that's why we did this first. Before we even get into purview controls, because making sure that we run these oversharing reports from the SharePoint Advanced Management Console or the SharePoint Admin Center are basically the best steps to start off. Because the first question that's ever going to ask you is somebody's going to say, okay, so what's our potential for oversharing? What's Copilot going to be able to see? So that's really that key place where we start. And then we can start talking about doing things more like DLP policies get set up, making sure that we have at least visibility. We understand how DSPM for AI works, be able to see these prompts, and we understand some of the other features and functionalities in there as well. So best place to start is really get an idea of knowing your data. Somebody put a really good link in there as well. Thank you, Social, for doing that. But that's really the first start, knowing where your data is, and then how is it being shared out there. Awesome. Great questions, everybody. Great to hear the feedback. Thank you. And again, remember everybody, I did post that link for register for the following sessions. I'll do it one more time. And I can hang on the phone for a little bit if somebody has some additional questions. I've got a little free space, but I want to start off and just say thank you to all of you out there. I know it's Friday. Some of you, it's late Friday. So we really appreciate you guys coming out here. We know time is the one thing you can never get back. So thank you so much. I want to say thank you to Liz, thank you to Ben, and thank you to Kevin for joining in the call as well. Really looking forward to seeing everybody else on the other sessions too. So please sign in, register, and we'll see you all next Friday, same time, same channel. And we're going to be talking about DSPM for AI. Great topic. So thank you, everybody. And I can hang on the phone call for a little bit. If there's any other questions you have, just let me know. Feel free to come off of mute. I can kind of talk forever. So you'll get to know me by now soon. I can talk. Yes, what great question, Pio. I will get those slides sent out. I'll probably make them into a PDF, and I'll get them shared out to everybody out there. Just keep an eye on your email. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I will end the series or the session. Looks like we do. Okay. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great day.